Okay, INFOLD, you officially have my attention.
I still hear your voice in the storm, like truth I can't transform. I still drown in what we were before, simmering, lingering. I watched our future turn to ash. Now you're buried in the past, simmering, lingering. Wish you'd last.
Hey, hi, hello, welcome in. For those of you who are maybe new to the channel, hi, I'm Nikki. For those of you who are returning, hi, how are you? This video is obviously going to include spoilers for the event, if you didn't get that from like the little montage that just played. So if you haven't played the event and you care about being spoiled, please put this in your watch later list and come check this video out after playing the story events if you don't wish to be spoiled. But if you don't care and you want to hear what I have to say without having played the story, or maybe you don't play Nvidia Nikki anymore, you've dropped the game and you're just kind of keeping tabs on it, then let's do this. So there's going to be 3 parts to this video, very basic stuff here. We've got the strengths of the narrative, we're going to talk about the weaknesses of the narrative, and then I'm going to talk about the update as a whole. That's not necessarily about like story or anything like that, just like the actual update of the game as a whole. Let's go ahead and get started. I've bookmarked everything below, so if you want to listen to something in particular, feel free to skip around and listen to what you would like, or be a real one and settle in for the whole thing. I'm going to start with the strengths because I think there's actually quite a bit. And compared to how unstable the game has been as of late, this is really encouraging to see the company produce this kind of an update. Is it perfect? No, and we're going to get to why that is, both narratively and again, like I have some critiques of the update as a whole. But in terms of the step in the right direction, hell freaking yes. There is an actual emotional core to this narrative. Once again, we are revisiting themes of trust, friendship, sacrifice, love, community, memory, resilience, this idea about untold history. These are all things that are present in the main story. We haven't really seen much of this in any really meaningful way in the event content, with a couple exceptions like the fireworks season, spooky season, you know, those storylines had some of these themes in there. But this event, this story really comes back to ground zero. And I think it encapsulates all of the most moving aspects of Infinity Nikki's story and the kind of experience the game should be consistently presenting. Do I think that the narrative we got should be the same narrative, right? The same kind of plot every single time? No. Of course not. That's not what I'm saying. But these themes and playing with them in this way is really well done, in my opinion. Again, nothing is perfect, but I actually think this narrative has heart. It has soul. They're really trying to tell a story. It's not some like filler thing about involving the sprites or whatever. It's not some shallow little thing with NPCs you don't care about. No, they're actually trying to tell you a story, to immerse you in an experience that you will remember. One of the ways that they do this is by actually giving their NPCs character. I know that seems basic, but the main NPCs we interact with in this quest are Phoebe and Deanna. And these are 2 different people that have connections to Sith and Alicia, who are the other NPCs that are the, not the main focus in terms of who we interact with the most, but they are the emotional core of the story. And their story is the one being told. So while we're not interacting with them the most, we do learn about them and inherently learn about a lot of other aspects of the world. This also is what makes this event so good. We get world building, lore relevant plots, okay? We expand the fanatic wisher origins, right? Before this event, right, in this part of the map, which is right before we really head into Philomea's castle, right? The fanatic wishers are this kind of like heretical kind of group of hooded black figures, and they kind of just hover around a lot of the refugees from the outpost. They're not the same, but they hover around similar areas, and they're kind of these shady people. And the fanatic wisher camp, like stronghold, are ruins that by Relic Hill, and they kind of lead up into this very mysterious kind of lake by this cave. And until now, this part of the map has had no real relevancy to anything. No events. The main story never really went there into this area. So it's kind of just been this empty area. And I've always wondered what these ruins, what they were for, right? I knew that they were ruins from the fanatic wishers, right? And their war that happened with Florawish and Stoneville. But I didn't know much about that altercation between these two societies, or these three societies, right? I didn't know much about that. And so to finally get lore on this group of people was really interesting. And also, not only that, but we were given key historical events in this freaking event. And as a lore player, I was like nerding the fuck out. We got information and context about people, communities, and ways of life before the 8, led by Dexter, took to power during the long night, right? The dark, right? When the gods fell, the veil fall. Before the 8 rose up, there was this period of absolute chaos and suffering. And this event highlights that time period. And we follow this community of people, which are the fanatic wishers, who were essentially banded together by necessity, right? When the dark descended, the gods were no longer around. There were no such thing as stylists yet, because stylists were a cast of people created by the 8, led by Dexter, and they also accessed divine tablets that made WIM more accessible to the average person. So we also learned that before stylists, people who had an affinity for WIM were called womencers. So we get a new name and a new cast of people that were very, very attuned to WIM. You had to be very attuned to WIM in order to wield it before the 8 discovered the tablets that allowed more people to more easily access WIM, right? They could learn to access WIM. It's not something you have to be kind of born with or have natural affinity for like they used to with womencers. Stylists now have more access or can learn to wield it in a way that they couldn't before the tablets made it kind of accessible for everybody. Not everybody can be a stylist nowadays, but it's something you can kind of teach yourself. You can train yourself to wield WIM. But before the 8, right? That wasn't a thing. You had to have extreme affinity for WIM. So womencers were very rare and highly regarded people within their communities. I mean, obviously, because in times of strife and war and chaos, right, these people had no homes. Esslings were running amok. It was literally dark almost all the time. Children there was no school, there was no education, there was no structure, right? It was very much anarchy, especially in these early months and years of the dark where there was no structure, right? The 8, there was no rebellion yet. There was no resilience to these forces. And so it was really just down to these small communities of people having to rely on those of the womencers, the people, the rare people who could actually fight the Esslings, because very few of them could. They were very vulnerable, very weak to these kinds of things. And I just love that this event allows us to learn what life was like before the 8, right? It gives context to this part of the world's history we know very, very little about, especially before the 8. Like this is unheard of. Like we have not touched upon this part of history before at all. So learning how detrimental, how dangerous, how much suffering there was during this period also emphasizes how strong the 8 were. And when it's revealed that Alicia was a Womenser along with her companion, who is a mythical serpent, right? This is also something that I liked, that we're introducing a new kind of fantasy race. I don't know if she's like the only serpent of her kind, or if there's others like her. I'm not really sure where she came from either. I don't think she's from Wishfield. The Sith is from Wishfield, but that's conjecture. That's not necessarily what's said in the event, but that's my headcanon, because her clothes and stuff, it doesn't really look like she's from Wishfield. Like the design and the style doesn't look like she's from Wishfield, but we don't know that for sure. Alicia is from Wishfield though. But anyways, I'm getting off track. But I liked that they were introducing this new kind of mythical beast, right? We have had a few in Wishfield already, but this is really cool. And the reason why this is cool is because this is a creature or being that was around even after the gods left, right? But Sith is said to have been able to wield divine scrolls. Alicia, part of the reason why she ends up dying is because she goes to get the scroll so Sith can use it originally, but when in the process of doing that, Alicia tries to use it herself, and the cost is too great for her mortal form. Even as a strong Womenser, she's not strong enough to wield that kind of raw divine power by herself. And this is something that echoes Nikki's situation with the Heart of Infinity and all of the things that were introduced in the Sea of Stars, and before that in the original intro as well, where the Heart of Infinity is a very heavy burden, and misusing it has incredible consequences. And that kind of narrative theme is present in this story with Alicia, where she unfortunately fell to the power and she couldn't recover. It drove her mad, which is something that the seer warns Nikki about with the Heart of Infinity. And the other timeline, it drove Nikki mad as well. So it's kind of this mirroring plot thread, and I really like this. Some people might find it unoriginal, or maybe it's too repetitive, but because of how there's not been a lot of consistency with, in my opinion, in what the events are telling with the main story. There's not a lot of relevance or reference to main story themes or plot threads. And so to have this event kind of layer over a lot of the themes present in the main story, not just basic arcs, but they're also taking new information about the world, new information about mythical creatures, and also the magic, right? Womency, learning more about this power, its nature, and how it's not just something that's dangerous for Nikki, that overwhelming divine whim, right? Overwhelming divine power is something that even the most good-hearted people like Alicia can't bear, right? She can't bear it. And I loved this whole thing. The relevancy of the lore, the key historical events, adding to the world building. I mean, it was just a buffet. I was having such a good time. Listen, for some people who maybe don't care as much about the lore, maybe they don't find this as fun or as intriguing, but I was having a heyday. Because Phoebe, which is one of the NPCs, is a historian, and so she's also very interested in learning the truth about what actually happened during this time period, because there's not a lot of records, which also great world building, because why would there be solid records during a time where there was so much anarchy, so much chaos, that people were just worried about making it through the next hour, right? Making it through the day, let alone writing down their experiences, right? Many people are just worrying about basic needs like food, shelter, water, like having their children and their loved ones not die, in the next hour because of an S-Sling attack, right? So it makes sense that during a time of such strife, there wouldn't be a lot of solid record keeping. And so I also liked that there's this like very realistic element to the world building, which is present in the main story, and which I felt was kind of lacking in these events. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And I really liked that they're introducing this heavier tone, because listen, as much as I love the whimsy and stuff, and there is a little bit of that in this quest, despite how dark and how heavy a lot of the themes, the core themes are of the event, there is this level of romantic whimsy about suffering. And yes, suffering is bad, and what happened to Alicia was horrible, especially since Sith had to be the one to kill her because she literally went mad and was a danger to the very people she, you know, Alicia was a danger to the very people she was trying to protect so desperately. Like, that's heartbreaking. That's completely tragic. And it's sending Sith into this endless depression, this endless remorse and regret that she cannot escape from, that she blames herself. And that just 2 months after Alicia's death, the first of the 8, led by Dexter, rose up and really wrangled some sort of structure into the world, into humanity's, you know, ranks, to fight against the dark. That happened literally only 2 months after Alicia's death. And so that made it even worse for Sith, that she's like, if we just waited 2 months, what if? And that's a big part of the theme of this event as well, is this idea of what ifs. Right? What if we did this? What if we did that? And the emotional cost of regret and how it can burden people, not just you or, you know, your loved ones, but a whole community can bear regret and pass it along generation through generation and not realize it, right? Part of the blue tier bottles is that in this season of blue tiers, right? It's a season kind of like a holiday season, right? As like like fall or winter or summer. They kind of talk about these seasons in this way. And in Florawish, blue tier's season is like a literal season of time where the water kind of gets this blue fluorescence and people just weep and cry and release their regrets, their suffering into the water, and it carries it away for them. And so in this way, the fanatic wishers, who were descendants of both Florawish and Stoneville, like, these are people that came together from those communities and then rebelled against them. And then, of course, that's a separate timeline than like before the 8, right? I hope that's kind of confusing. So the event follows 2 timelines: fanatic wisher camp that revolted against Florawish and Stoneville, and then even way before that, before the 8, with Sith and Alicia, who were a separate time period. So there's kind of two time periods here that the event follows. And I felt that they made it very clear which time period was being spoken about, and both context from both of those timelines feed into each other really well. So that's a compliment I have for the narrative, because sometimes working with timelines is very tricky when you're writing a script or a narrative. So having both of these timelines, as well as the present one Nikki is in, right, all cohesively make sense and feed into each other and build to the same emotional climax, deserves its kudos. Okay, that deserves praise, because that's very difficult to do. Again, I don't think it's perfect, and I'll get to that in the weaknesses section, but overall, the emotional buildup was fantastic. The themes being spoken about were lovely. And this idea, this exploration of regret is strong, but resilience and quiet love is stronger, right? Passing along peace, passing along warmth, passing along silent strength is always going to win out against your own regrets, against whatever you might be facing. Love, trust, sacrifice, community, resilience, all of it will always outweigh the worst of what humanity has to come up against. And that's the core of the story, right? Yes, it's tragic that Alicia did what she did and that she was unable to handle the power, and Sith, her best friend, had to literally kill her because she went crazy, right? She went mad with the power and she was hurting the people she was trying to protect. That, of course, is horrible, right? I believed that tragedy, right? I didn't sit there and go like, oh, okay, like, sure. You know, like, I was actually very invested. I believed these stories. I believed these characters. And Nikki is in full character. I've said before that Nikki in some of the events felt very different. She didn't feel like the Nikki from the main story. But oh boy, this Nikki is the Nikki I know. This is the Nikki I freaking know. She was thoughtful. She was kind, she was compassionate, she was understanding, she was insightful. I mean, she had it all. She was absolutely full throttle this entire event, and I loved it so freaking much. She had moments in the narrative where she got to think and actually process the things that she was hearing, what life was like for these people. She had so much empathy, so much understanding for these people, right? For the people in like the very, very early timeline before the 8, those community of people who were suffering every day. Children couldn't fucking sing or laugh. They were crying all the time. And to see her process this and to hear her actually speak on it, right? It's not just like told to her and we move on, right? She's actually given time to process how she feels about this. And it makes what's happening in the story more real when your protagonist acknowledges the narrative. They acknowledge what's happening in a very personal way, and that elevates it every time. Like, it doesn't matter what story it is, right? Not even just games, whatever, this game or whatever. Any story, if your protagonist is properly acknowledging what they're experiencing, it will always elevate the experience for the reader or the viewer or the player or whatever, right? Whatever the medium of storytelling is, it always elevates it. So I was so happy to see them once again return to this habit that they had in the main story of Nikki actually reacting to what she was seeing, what she was hearing, and how she felt, right? Because her expressing how she feels about all this tragedy, what she thinks about it, allows me to not only learn more about Nikki, but it also gives more weight and more believability to the world, because Nikki believes it, so I believe it too. Does that make sense? I found that was fantastic. A couple things that are more mechanical, more literary, more analytical that I wanted to say about the event, not so much just, gushing about how much emotionally I was invested, but more on the analytical side. I really liked how they used the banner outfits, the 5-star and 4-star outfits in this story. One of the biggest criticisms I've had of this game in their events is how the outfits are always presented in these like little ads, these little cutscene ads. And it is very shallow, and I despise it every time because it takes me out of the moment. It doesn't enhance the moment that in the story that it's happening, where it's just kind of there because they want to show off the outfit. But they must have heard the criticism, because not mine specifically. I'm not that egotistical, but they improved this in that the outfits are actually used in the story. They are tied to huge emotional beats in the narrative. Even the 4-star is tied to lore, is tied to moments in the game that build up to, like, the 4-star is used to collect the little lights, and it's part of the tradition and lore of that community, and it gives us access to the key where we're gonna go see Sith, where the serpent is still kind of trapped in her misery. And so this outfit is actually relevant to the lore, relevant to the story, and emotionally connected. So now whenever I see this outfit, it doesn't matter what I think of how it's designed. I will always remember that part of the story. Always, always. And I won't remember the cutscene. I'll remember the moment, the emotional moment of that story. And same with the 5-star. The way they use the 5-star, they only give you the 5-star outfit once you've entered Sith's memory domain. So you're kind of embodying Sith. It's kind of like you're her mirror almost. You're kind of embodying her magic, what's left of her soul. Because she says, I've given up my body long ago. I've just been stuck here. My soul, I can't bear this regret, this sadness. I can't stand my suffering, and yet I can't find peace. I can't rest. And so my soul is stuck here in constant turmoil. And Nikki essentially embodies her in body and soul, and essentially communicates with this poor freaking creature / being, and soothes her and gives her closure, gives her the permission to finally rest. And that Alicia would want this, right? Because we learned so much about Alicia, and Nikki is able to hear what the ghosts are saying from the past, and also hear Alicia's voice and what Alicia was saying, and really embody what Alicia's true heart was, right? She can convey this with full sincerity to Sith herself. And this is what finally gives Sith the peace that she's been waiting for literally thousands of years. That's crazy how sad that is. But anyways, the banner outfits were used very well. These outfits were tied to incredibly important emotional moments of the story. Not just little cutscene ads, right? They were actually, we got to wear them, we got to move around in them, we got to actually spend sections of the story in these outfits. And I think that this is a great trend that they should continue, because this is what is going to emotionally bond people to the outfit. They might see the outfit and go, oh, that's nice, or maybe they don't feel, you know, very passionate about it, right? But after playing the story, you're definitely gonna want to pull now if you like the story. Obviously, if it's your preference or an opinion, you didn't like the story for whatever reason, for personal reasons, then that's, you know, that's your opinion, right? Of course, that's valid in your own situation. But like, objectively, the story was very well thought out. It was very well presented. And the outfits, the usage of the outfits during the story was well placed. It didn't feel random. It didn't feel in your face. It didn't feel shallow. They actually gave these outfits emotional beats and elevated those emotional beats. Another thing about elevation of emotional beats is the use of music. Oh my God. In the dungeon, right? Sith's Serpent Dungeon, the usage of music, the sound design in general, right? This event has been miraculous. The usage of whispers, of these haunting melodies that really emphasize the suffering of the community that we learn about, and the suffering of Alicia and Sith, her longing for peace and for her regret for having to do something so heinous to her own friend, someone she loved so dearly. She fought beside Alicia, right? Sith fought beside her. They pretended to be divine envoys of the Wishing One so they could give people hope. Like, they weren't, Sith wasn't a divine envoy, but she let people believe this. Alicia also encouraged this because she knew that the community of people, this community, needed something to hold on to. They needed hope, even if it was a lie. I mean, it's what makes it so much more tragic, but the use of music is so impeccable. And then once we get into the dungeon, the music, the way it's timed, reminded me so freaking much of the crane ride. It's that level to me. It's that caliber of moments where I actually sat back in my chair and was like, oh my God, right? I actually took my breath away how they wove the music into the building tension of the plot going through the dungeon. Because they could have just had the dungeon and like you just go through the dungeon, whatever, but they actually used the music really cleverly. They had whispers at first, like when you first enter the dungeon, it's mostly whispers. It's like a few haunting notes of music, and then it slowly builds. The whispers suddenly get clearer and clearer, louder and louder. The music builds, the instrumentals rise as you get further and further in. And then you have outright chorus of singing when there's like this really intense part of the dungeon where you're trying to dodge arrows and boulders and stuff like that. And then after this high intense moment, the whispers come down when you finally see Sith's head, the head of the serpent, because the whole dungeon is her body like wrapped around stuff because she's this huge creature. But when you finally get to Sith's head, everything kind of comes back down and the music dies down and it's whispers again and lamenting voices and these haunting notes again, and then it leads you into the next like big major cutscene / dialogue sequence that's not connected with the dungeon itself, the gameplay of the dungeon itself. And I felt this elevated it so much because now I wasn't just like, oh, you know, I'm just exploring the dungeon, whatever, which can be fun. Like, it wouldn't have been that bad on its own, but the fact that they used the music so well to enhance the tension, it reminds you that you're still you're still in this moment of the story, right? You're not just separating into just gameplay mode where you're just kind of like apathetic now. You're just kind of getting through the gameplay to get back to the story stuff. No. You're still in the moment. The game doesn't let you leave the emotional ride. It's holding on to you and it's guiding you through this dungeon with this music playing in the background, increasing the tension, making you want to get to I didn't even want to explore. I didn't want to go into every nook and cranny of the dungeon because I was so immersed. I was so invested. I was like, I want to get to Sith. And then the music crescendoing and the sounds and the songs and the singing also getting louder and louder as we get closer. Like, it made me want to go faster. Like, I wanted to get to Sith and find her body faster and faster as the music guided me through. So Fantastic usage of the music in this dungeon. Absolutely amazing. I really loved every freaking second of it. And again, it was the same kind of impact that the crane ride gave me, where the song kicks in as you're flying on the crane through the wishing factory, and you're just like stunned. You're speechless with how lovely the song is and how much of a moment they crafted for you. And that felt similar, where this moment in this dungeon, they crafted moments for you and kept the tension going. And it was great. I literally have nothing but praise to say about that. So wonderful use of music, wonderful use of tension, keeping tension, building tension, keeping the player invested and not allowing them to eject from the story, like the emotional story, as easily as some of these other events have, where you kind of just detach easily because there's not much pulling you in, right? That is not the case in this event. So overall, this was a fantastic, the characters were well done. They were very realistically portrayed. Like, this is how people in this community with these resources would react, right? And I love that. Nikki got the chance to actually be a character and have reactions to things and think about things and care and express that care, express her concerns, express anything. We all got that tied up in a little bow with this. And I cannot articulate how much I need the game to continue in this direction. It needs to be this every time. It doesn't have to be the specific story or whatever, but the way that they structured this event, the heart behind it, there was actual art in this event, right? Presentation of the dungeon, to the narrative, to the writing, to the voice acting, to the music, all of it was telling a story. This was art. This was telling a story. Of course, they want to sell the dresses and all that stuff, but there was integrity to the storytelling. And I think that this is what needs to continue going forward. And if this is what they maintain, right, in every event moving forward, regardless of what the theme of the event is, it doesn't have to be melodrama every time, but this integrity in the storytelling is necessary, in my opinion, for this game to at all climb out of the hole it's dug itself. Those were the strengths. Now, weaknesses. So the narrative weaknesses, there were a few. I felt that the story started out a little slow. I think this is because there was so much production that went into the second half of the event, right? The story, that maybe the beginning, they kind of had to leave that to the wayside because they put so much production in the second half. And it was so good, right? The buildup was so good. But the actual like NPCs, we kind of just talk to NPCs to start the quest out. And it's, you know how there's dialogue sequences where you have close-ups of Nikki and she's like making, you know, movements with her hands. She's got expressions on her face. And also the NPCs will have movements and expressions and talk. And there's like interactive dialogue sequences and exchanges. A lot of that wasn't there at the very start. It was just like just Nikki standing there, and we're just facing Nikki's back and we just see the NPC in front of us and they're just like talking at us. That is less interesting. I feel like most players give a lot of grace to this kind of stuff for the most part, but I would have liked to see a little less of that, because it did feel a little, because I was so eager to get into the actual like story and like figure out what was going on and like what's the lore behind this. And so maybe it was just my eagerness, you know, maybe it's less like analytically it was slow, but it did feel a little bit, it dragged its feet building up to certain things. I didn't think that the NPCs like Deanna, who we meet, one of the first NPCs we meet, I didn't think that their introductions were bad. I felt that they were just fine, but it was a little slow to start. And I don't think that it's engaging to just have Nikki standing there and the NPC standing there and just like dialogue and just like talking, because that's not engaging to really look at. Even if what we're being told is interesting, right? They're setting up the lore, they're setting up questions, they're setting up tension, they're setting up everything that's going to come later. You know, it's still, you want to present it in an interesting way. And I did think it was a bit slow. And again, maybe I'm a little bit biased because I was very eager to get into the meat of it. So maybe I was just too hungry. I was chomping at the bit. So maybe that's not as objective as of an observation as I would like it to be. You guys can tell me what you think down below if you've played the quest, but I did think it was kind of slow to start. I also would have liked to know more about Sith and her origins. Not that that would have to be like the main point, right? Because the emotional core is her relationship with Alicia, right? That's the core, the emotional core of the story, and that's completely fine. But I would have actually liked to learn more about Sith, and where she came from. Are there other people like her? Like, are there other beings like her? Or is she like the only of her kind? She seems, it's implied that she has some divine ability, right? She's able to wield power. She's not immortal, right? She's not human at all. So whatever power she can wield, I'm wondering if it's similar to like the kind of power the gods can wield or not. Because they did mistake her, like the villagers that Alicia and Sith were trying to protect, this community did mistake Sith for the divine envoy of the Wishing One, right? So they however she used her power, did it maybe suggest, did it seem similar to the Wishing One? I'm not really sure, since we don't know much about how the gods expressed their power in the world when they were still around. We don't know much about that, so it's hard to compare. And again, this is more like specific, this is more nitpicky, but I would have liked to learn more about like her history as like a creature or like a being, where she originated from. I also would have liked to hear more from Sith. Towards the end, I love to hear from Nikki, so I'm not complaining about Nikki monologuing or expressing how she feels, but it was a lot of Nikki talking at Sith at the very end, and I would have liked to hear more from Sith. I mean, they did have a whole conversation, so I'm not saying like Sith didn't speak at all, but I think I would have liked to hear Sith speak a little bit more and express a little bit more about things, or maybe having Nikki, I mean, I guess it would be kind of like an inappropriate time to ask any of this, so I kind of understand why it's not there, and it'd be kind of hard to fit this in because it's not really relevant to the main emotional tension of the moment when Nikki ends up getting face to face with Sith. So but I would have liked, it would have been cool if Nikki would have asked more about that time period, right? About what the gods, where they'd went or what happened, like asking Sith these questions. Again, I think it would have been hard to fit this in and have it make sense, because when she does end up talking to Sith, it's a very emotionally charged moment that's revolving around Sith's pain. So I don't think it would have made a lot of sense in hindsight. But it would have been interesting if maybe we could have gotten, maybe Phoebe could have done some digging, or, you know, because she is a historian, so maybe she could have learned more about Sith's people. I mean, obviously the whole point of the story is that they don't know. Sith and Alicia's story was lost to time, and Nikki is the only reason people were able to learn about Sith and Alicia, the truth about Sith and Alicia too. But maybe we could have had her do some digging about serpent-like beings, right? Where are they from? Is that something Wishfield specific, or is that from another nation? And it could have like hinted at other creatures or beings in other nations, because to me, Sith, very much the way in which her dress is, it very much gave Oriental type of style. And I think it would have been interesting if like Sith was from like the Linlong Empire or something like that, where we're getting information about very powerful beings that are not from Wishfield. Alicia is from Wishfield, but I don't think it was confirmed that Sith was. Sith was her companion, but I don't think Sith originated from Wishfield. I mean, maybe she did, and I missed that or something. But I think from Sith's design, right? Nikki's, the 5-star outfit, which is, I assume, Sith in her human form, I think it would have been interesting to learn more about her origins. And again, this is very nitpicky. This isn't like, the fact that it wasn't there isn't like, doesn't ruin the whole experience. But I did think because of the emphasis on history that this event has, it would have been nice to learn more about Sith. And leaving some stuff to mystery is good, because you want mystery in a story like this. It adds to the atmosphere of the narrative. So I'm not complaining about that too much, but I personally think it would have just added more small details in there for players to chew on and think about and anticipate, you know, in upcoming content. So not the biggest thing ever, but those are really like the two main narrative weaknesses that I noticed, and that I think could have been improved. But I think a lot of the dialogue exchanges, a lot of the character work, a lot of the emotional core and tension in the plot was done really well. So I have no real criticisms of that. Last part of the video, where I'm going to talk about just the update as a whole, and there is a couple icky things. As much praise as I slathered on the narrative, all right, I do have to say, I can't not say this, but there are a couple items that they released for this event, specifically limited featured items in the store. And a lot of the times, these items that have been released in the past are things that some of them you have to buy with the Stellarites, like actual money, the currency you need with actual money. But a lot of them, most of the time, you can get with diamonds. So if you save enough diamonds, you can still get that without having to actually swipe, right? To actually spend money, because there's no way to transfer diamonds into Stellarites, right? So you have to use real money to get certain items. But a lot of the time they've balanced this relatively well, where you can still actually get the item with diamonds. Obviously you can still buy it with money, you can swipe to get the diamonds, but for people who are maybe free to play or less, you know, they don't spend that much, right? They can save up for this item if they really, really want it. But in this event, guys, there's like 7 items, I think, total. And only one of them you can get with diamonds. The rest, you have to spend Stellarites or just like money, just straight up. It says like $2 or $3 or whatever. And I know this isn't like a huge deal, but it's kind of icky. It's kind of icky to have almost all the items, like literally all of them except one, you have to buy with real money to obtain. You can't save up for it during the event, you know, like, oh, I want this really cool set piece, because there's like a set piece, like a prop piece for photos and stuff that's really cool. It's like this swamp tree trunk thing that kind of matches the 5-star outfit. So for someone who maybe wanted to get that, they can save up their diamonds throughout the, you know, getting their diamonds through the event, and they can purchase that set piece, that prop, through that. But they can't, right? That they have to buy it. And I don't like that. I really don't like that. And I think it's icky that they did this. It's kind of scummy, especially since, and the other items too, is like makeup, there's poses, things are cosmetic. Like these are things that, like, I'd understand them wanting to get you to swipe for like props, because the props are something that they lock behind poles. So they're already something you have to pay for. But like the makeup, you can't just get the makeup with a couple diamonds. Like that stuff to me is silly. Or like the poses, there's like a couple poses for one of them, and it's like, why? Just the poses are something we can earn in game. I don't understand why they made you pay real money for these. Like it doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know why people just couldn't get those with their diamonds. So that kind of stuff. And it's like, it's only a few like dollars. It's like, I think in total it was like around $15-20 to get like all of the items, I think, or something close to that. I don't know. But still, like, why can't people get them with their diamonds? Like maybe big props, fine. You have that's locked behind real money. But poses? Makeup? Why is that behind real money? Why can't people just save diamonds for that? Right? Like, I think that's silly. So I wanted to mention that because it is something I noticed and it kind of bothered me. It doesn't come across very friendly. And this game is, I know this game is like, oh, we're losing money, but you don't make money by further pressuring your player base into spending money that with increasingly dissatisfying practices and their events. I mean, this event was really good, but like most of the other events have fallen short for a lot of people. And so a lot of people have either left the game already or they have no incentive to spend on the game because there's not seeing improvement in the content that they want to see. So they're not going to spend. I digress. Overall, really good step in the right direction. Narratively, at least, right? Narratively, impeccable. Absolutely loved it. Was everything perfect? No, nothing's perfect, but this is what I want to see. This is what I want to see in the future. Narrative integrity. That's all I want, right? It doesn't matter what the story is. It doesn't have to be, you know, melodrama and suffering every time. People like, you know, tend to gravitate toward those kinds of stories naturally because we're humans and we like the tea. But, right, it doesn't have to be melodrama every time for it to be good. But narrative integrity, yeah, that is something that needs to be present in everything. If they want the story to impact people, if they want people to care. Usage of the banner outfits, fantastic. Usage of the music, fantastic. These are things that they can apply to any of the events moving forward, and I seriously hope they do. The trailers that they presented, the vibes of the quest, all of these promises that they made, you know, with the trailers and stuff like that, delivered 100%. There was no discrepancy between what I thought the event was going to be like and what it actually was. In fact, it exceeded my expectations because my expectations are quite low nowadays, unfortunately, with Infinity Nikki, and this felt like main story writing. This felt like the same kind of experiences I had while playing the main story, and I'm so grateful that it's back, that we've gotten a sip of something real. Again, I really, really would like to see more of this. I'm still concerned about the monetization practices of this company, and I hope that they continue to rein those in, at least while they're getting their rhythm back, their momentum back in terms of their game content, right? Because people are going to be more willing to support or spend on the game if it's reflective of what they want from the game, right? If their content is quality, then people will be more willing to spend. If you have not played Infinity Nikki in a while, right? You've dropped the game. Is this event enough to make you return? That is something you're going to have to think for yourself. Obviously, if you've watched till this point, you know, you've gotten spoiled, you know, pretty spoiled of the story and like the emotional core of it. But if this is something that you consider giving the game a chance again, you know, be my guest. I'm not telling you to. If you think this game isn't for you anymore, it doesn't matter. Even if it improves, you're still done with it. That is your prerogative, right? I respect that decision 100%. So hopefully, if you were wondering, is this good? Is this not? Maybe I helped answer that question for you, or helped inform you about maybe a decision about continuing to play or not continuing to play, depending on what you thought of this story. But at least analytically, I can say that this story did a good job in telling itself, right? There was actual integrity in the craft of this event story. Whether you liked it or not is preference, but I think that it actually objectively did a good job. And it's something that the other events have severely lacked, with a couple exceptions. Like, I think the fireworks season event was actually very good, and, you know, other, you know, spooky season in its own way too. But I think this event, it really needs to be the new standard. And if it is, we can only go up from here. If not, if this is a one-off, if this is a fluke, that is very unfortunate. But I hope to see more of this kind of storytelling from INFOLD moving forward. Thank you so much for making it to the end of the video. If you did, as always, I very much appreciate you spending your time with me. I hope I wasn't too tangent-y. I tried to make my points concise. I didn't want to talk about like in-depth lore stuff, because I really just wanted to talk about like the actual narrative in terms of like how it was crafted and like how it was executed, because I think that's what people really want to hear about in a review like this. But I also loved learning about all the lore. Like, I actually had a whole fucking feast with this event, and it was the first time where I was like actually super eager to play all the side content, because it wasn't like a chore I had to do to earn the diamonds that I need for like other stuff, right? I was actually like, I want to learn more about this. I want to learn like the side quest content. Like, I want to see if they maybe expand on certain things, or like maybe talk about some, like they have like a small hint about maybe Sith or something, her past, or Alicia or whatever, right? So I was actually very emotionally invested in this quest. And if you have played it, please let me know down below. I really am so curious to hear my community's reaction to this event, because I feel like a lot of us here share a lot of the same opinions when it comes to like the quality of the game as of late. And a lot of us still have hope for this game, because there is a lot of potential here. And I think that this is giving me hope. I don't want to acknowledge it because I don't want to be disappointed if the next event isn't as good as this, but I really wish that this is where the game goes in the future. And I would really hope that INFOLD recognizes this and that they continue this trend, because like, it's just, this is what we need. This is what the game needs. So please let me know what you think, because I really, really want to know. I have all my socials linked down below, so if you would like to check those out, please feel free. We have a channel Discord. We're really chill over there. We have like all different fandoms in there. Genshin, HSR, Nvidia Nikki, you name it. It's all very loosey-goosey, and we're kind of all there just to hang out. So if you would like to check that out, please do. I do announce all, like, when I stream and when I update on videos and stuff like that, I always post those there first. So if you want kind of just updates and notifications and you don't really want to engage in the community, then that's fine too. Like, we don't really care. Do you, bro? Do you? If I don't see you live, then I will see you in the next one.